aren't you gonna do your hey?
I know it did happen the last couple episodes, didn't it?
It did.
I tried to come in excited with some good energy. What's wrong? What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it. A couple things. One is welcome to Define Moments and Memories. I'm Rick Sykowski.
I'm Eric Yocklin.
I have a couple things to start off. Well, first we have this is gonna be our first guest of 2026.
Yeah.
So I have a couple things before our first guest of 2026 comes in.
What do you got, buddy?
What are things that you miss that we did as a kid? And I'm not saying like, oh, fun playing with our friends or whatever. Like, what do you do now that you don't get enjoyment out of that you did as a kid? I'll give you an example.
It would have been great had you given me a heads up that you were going to ask me this because
I know. I thought the same thing. I thought the same thing. That's why I was going to give you examples to maybe trigger, because I know you have to have 4 months of prep.
Exactly. Prep. I got to process. I got to that whole thing.
Totally.
But go ahead. Wait, give me your example and what do you got?
So, well, example number one is clearly sleep. Like, do you remember just going to bed and waking up in the morning?
It was always difficult for me to wake up in the morning. I never like slept overslept alarm.
I'm not saying you wake up refreshed or anything. What I'm saying is you go to bed and then all of a sudden it's morning, like you time travel.
Oh, got it. That whole thing. Yeah, you're not waking up in the middle of the night to pee 6 times.
Six times. Dude, this is so hacky. It's so hacky to talk about this. It really is. But it's like when it happens to you, you're like,
right.
Is this happening to everyone? I get everyone talks about it, but this is a real thing. All right, so that's one. But that's not even where I want to go. What I used to really like that I don't find any enjoyment out of anymore is going to the movie theaters. I think it's we have Alamo Draft House here, which is you sit down and you can order, and they will kick you out if you're they'll
talking.
Yeah, if you're talking to or my mind went, did I tell you when I almost got in a fight at the Alamo? Did we talk about that?
Yeah, but please share. I don't know.
No, it makes me look horrible. That was probably more me. But it was just someone was talking, Gigi.
Yeah.
The long short of it is someone was talking. This was during Deadpool. I watched it, and then I came back the next night with Gigi because I watched it with the kids. Came back the next night because I didn't want her to hear any of the spoilers of who was in it and stuff. So this couple, they just came in. And you get to Alamo early because they do curated content. Like, so they'll do like really weird videos that you find on YouTube about Deadpool, and it's all curated. So this couple that came in and they were just already loud. And it's like, okay, but it's during the curation part. So I'm like, that's somewhat fine. Right. The credits roll, and if you saw the movie, like right in the beginning, the jokes are flying. And so she missed 2 jokes, and she just turns over. She's like, "Hey, can you guys please be quiet?" They looked at her.
Who said that?
Gigi said that to the couple, and the couple looked over and literally just disregarded her and kept talking. So I leaned over. I'm like, "Shut up." And the guy's like, "What's your problem?" I was like, "Dude, do you want to take this outside? What am I going to do? I'm not going to do anything."
Is that literally where you went with it? Like,
I went right there immediately.
Wow.
But
dang.
So here's the thing, and you know how much of a sissy I am. Like the whole movie, I'm just being like, "Oh my god, this is by the way." So after the credits, everyone stays around for all the Marvel movies and stuff because of the cutscenes or whatever. Yeah. So this couple leaves, and I was like, we can't leave. What if this guy's out there waiting for me? I'm like, I'm gonna have to do something. Like, I didn't mean it. I just wanted him to shut up. So I made friends with the person sitting next to me, and we totally hit it off. And he was a jiu-jitsu teacher. I was like, oh,
perfect.
Thank God.
Oh, look at that. Just present from the angels.
Yeah. But anyways, that was such a side tangent. It doesn't make me look good. I get that I probably should have went to 25% instead of 100, but the whole thing is like, I don't enjoy the process. Now, the Alamo makes it easy. You can get your tickets online, and it's seated, like numbered seating, which is a big deal.
Are we sponsored by them? What's happening right now?
No, well, I'm trying to lay the groundwork here for a sponsorship. No, no, it's one of those things where I like the kids would go to a movie. It's like, I'm like, well, did you guys reserve your seats? Like, oh no, you just go and you find your seats. It's like, oh, I couldn't even imagine that. I couldn't even. That's worst. Just, it's horrible. And so, so that's one. I have other ones, but do you have anything that's coming to the top of your mind that you still love?
Yeah. So, the first thing that just popped in my head immediately was just there's really not a lot of pressures of life, and you can literally just jump on your bike and go ride your bike to find some friends. like, or whatever, like go find, go down to your house and see where you're at, or no, I think you went to so-and-so's, and go down there, whatever, go find your friends. But just that, like, and then out just doing nothing, right? Like just out having fun, like whatever that meant, like just taking random paths in the woods, on your bike, and that, that carefreeness, or just stupid.
I get that, but that's too general.
It is,
like,
it is general.
Mine's general. Like going to the movies is general, but it's a thing. Like here's a second thing that I used to love to do. I can't stand now. It's just driving around. Now, like I don't know if it's because of like after the pandemic and I work mostly out of the house. Like I'm nervous driving most of the time now. Huh. I clutch my pearls.
I still enjoy driving, and similar to you, I drive a lot less now post pandemic than I did prior, but now it's there's almost a level of it that is more of a relaxation or escape from a lot of different things, because I can't be on emails while I'm driving, and I can't, like there's just stuff that I actually appreciate it and enjoy it even more now, because it's more rare, and it's a nice little mental break for me. So the other thing that just popped into my head is listening. This is going to sound maybe a little bit weird, but listening to music in its entirety. I remember sitting in my bedroom, like when I had my, what first started with just like my receiver and a tape deck and my headphones. Like I didn't even have speakers for, a while for that system. I built that up over many years. And I just remember laying there listening to music, and it wasn't like I'm over there fast forwarding, stopping, going back, the whole thing. Now I catch myself constantly, even when I'm scrolling through whatever social media, but probably TikTok for new music. Even when I hear a song where I go, oh, this sounds something like I would love, I just go save it to Apple Music, next. Yep. I don't even take the time to listen to it. I come back, I add it to a mix, like when we make our mixes, I'll come back and listen to it when I'm in the car or something along those lines. And it hits me and I go, man, there used to be a time where I used to just sit and relax and enjoy music and really kind of take that in, and whatever, that's like being with your thoughts or really being immersed in the music, or all those types of things. Who was I just talking to? That there was a comedian. I don't know if it was you and I were having the conversation about how people talk about how it was so great like back in the 90s or whatever, and you could do whatever you wanted and go out and do whatever. And he's like, yeah, also you had to go stand at the bus stop, and you know what you did? You stared at your shoes. Yeah. There's nothing to do when you're standing at the bus stop waiting for the bus.
Yes, but I think, God, this is where we start getting old, when we start talking about like our kids and what I don't like based on how we grew up. Like, Here's the thing: every second you have to be entertained. Every second, and I'm part of that thing. Like I can't. Well, like you were just talking about music. Like I go in my backyard, I'll put music on, and I'll sit there and scroll through TikTok while the music's on. And it's like if we were back then. Think about we had this cool backyard back then. We'd sit there and literally just go in and either talk or just listen to music.
Yeah, or play super poolside ball toss.
Well, that was a little later in life.
But it's the kind of stuff you would do when we were younger. Like, have fun, play, do what. Yeah.
Oh, no, you know what? That's another thing that you just reminded me of. I can't imagine a world where I swim in a lake again. Like behind your house. That to me, like, why would we have done that?
Well, we didn't really behind the house, but we took the paddle boat out. And
we took the paddle boat, right? It was a canal out to the lake, and then you just jump off the paddle boat into the lake. That's crazy to me.
I'm with you. That's a great example of your initial question here, because I go out on the stand-up paddleboard sometimes, and I'm next to terrified of falling off, which is half of what keeps me on the entire time. I actually had a boat go by one time, and the wave got too big, and I couldn't keep my balance, and I dumped. And it was fascinating how quickly I just like panicked, because you could see all the seaweed down there, and I was like, ah! And like,
it's horrible.
Jump, get back on. I was like, what happened? There was a day where like going to swim out to like the floating raft or like just jumping in the lake, like no problem. Now I'm like, oh, it's gross. I don't want to do that.
when I was up there for 4th of July, my sister has access to a lake, and hundreds, maybe 1,000 people were out there on this, and and they had like the tier jump off things, and like,
Sure.
and my sister's like, "Why don't you go out there?" I was like, "Cause it's a lake."
for what purpose? Because I don't want to be sick for the next 2 years. How about that?
The Florida lakes, people will say like you'll get this like skin disease that eats away your skin or something.
It's not like West Nile virus, is it? I don't know what it is.
Dude, this is the problem. Once you get a microphone, you feel like you should have the answers. So I see why. No, we're like the last people should be talking about diseases and stuff.
I know, but we could Google it or ChatGPT it and come back and make us look good. But what's the point of that?
Yeah, exactly. Like
that's
no one's coming here for like let's hear your take on vaccines.
You could just stop after no one's coming here. It doesn't matter. What are we doing? We're hanging out. So do you want to talk about our guest? Because I think that's coming real soon.
I do want to talk about our guest. Yeah, so our guest is going to be Tony Ianni. He's an executive producer, director, specializes in TV. Live TV. He produced the Miss Universe Awards before, the New York City Marathon, NHL Awards, and one of my favorite shows that he does, and I love this show, is Super Bowl's greatest commercials every year, right before the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's so much fun, and it's so nostalgic to go back. Obviously, everyone remembers like the What's Up dudes and the frogs and stuff like that. But it's cool to see the ones. It's cool to see the ones that you don't really remember. But so they do that every year, and they're typically themed and stuff. So we'll get into kind of. I want to talk to him about that. But he's a colleague of mine, and we'll get into this. So here's another. This isn't an adult thing. This is a podcast thing. It's having a conversation, because we were at a Christmas party, him and I, and it was really the first time I sat and talked with him. He's been with us for about a year, maybe a year and a half, 2 years. But I believe he's West Coast. We'll find out here in a second. But we were sitting there talking, and I was like, wait, don't tell me the story. I want it on the podcast. So I can't even have a normal conversation. You and I we'll be like, no, save it for the podcast.
Totally, 100%. No. Yeah, let's not talk about it here. Let's talk about it on the podcast.
All right, here he comes. Here comes Tony Ianni.
Ebb and flow. Here we go.
Tony.
Tony,
it hit me that are you in LA or New York?
No, I'm in LA.
This is so early for you.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. It gets me out about on a Saturday morning. So I was like, oh, that's fine. 6:30 is okay with me.
6:30 is not the time you want to be up on a Saturday morning.
No, I got my daughter with me this weekend, so now she'll be up in a little bit. So, but this is all good. No, I really appreciate you guys inviting me on this. I've watched a few of your episodes, and it's.
I'll apologize. Right now.
Apologize. Sorry. Yeah. So I was telling Eric that I was talking to you that this, like, having a podcast kind of ruins any type of friendship or anything I have with people, because like I was telling Eric that you and I were talking at the Christmas party, or actually at David Carabinus' house when he was having drinks. I was like, no, stop, don't tell me that. Tell me it on the podcast. Let's not have a real interaction here. It's got to be on camera.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's an honor to be talking to you guys, and you guys have spoken to a lot of very interesting people in in our business and other fields, and I'll just talk about my experience, a little less about myself, but like a lot of bit of what I experienced, being in sports TV for like 3 decades now. So, and happy to share all that with you.
We gave a quick intro. We kind of touched on Miss America, the New York City Marathon, NHL Awards, and Super Bowl's greatest commercials, which I love. So we could start anywhere, but I actually would really love to start with, and Eric is hearing this for the first time, is you were a musician early on and wanted to get into the music side of the business.
Nice.
Yeah, that's right. No, absolutely. I played in garage bands all through high school, and it came to a point where I realized that I was okay as a guitarist and bassist, but I wasn't going to be on the level where a lot of my friends were. I just knew that. But I did love music. I'm like, well, maybe I could be in the music industry in some capacity. And then I kind of went down this road of the whole process of the audio recording of these albums. And back then, it was quite an art. It was very analog. There were a lot of interesting tricks that and procedures that people would use to get certain sounds. And then one thing led to another, and I had an internship at a recording studio out on Long Island, where Blue Oyster Cult had recorded many of their albums. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they were,
of course, yeah.
Yeah, they were very, like, I guess we would call them a classic rock band, like the 60s, 80s, a very sort of classic rock sound. And then Joan Jett had recorded I Love Rock and Roll there as well, which was one of the biggest songs of the 80s. So I worked as sort of an intern there, learned how to sort of calibrate these big, bulky recording machines. Everything was on video, on tape, 2-inch tape, 24 tracks was sort of the standard at the time, and and a lot of it was technical. But I kind of wanted to be in. There was this one producer, Bob Clearmountain, who at the time was really hot. And he had this big sound, and everyone was trying to duplicate it, like, make drums sound like they're being played in a concert hall, but yet you're in a studio. Like the 70s, a lot of it was isolated. They wanted no bleed between mics. Everything was, there were a lot of, blankets, and everything had to be recorded cleanly. And then came the 80s, and everyone was like, let it sound like you're playing it live. And I was so curious about that. And then, but over time, I realized how difficult it was, and it was just, there just wasn't enough opportunities. There were only so many recording studios, so many artists out there, and I kind of just, from there, I kind of stumbled into sports TV, and a lot of the stuff that I kind of learned is being like an artist, and being a guitarist, and then also learning how to sort of kind of capture art through audio recording. It really kind of transferred over to, in a weird way.
So Tony, a couple of things here is we're going to interrupt you a little bit here and there.
You can, please do, because I kind of go on a little bit.
No, it's not even that. It's like I don't like I for some reason want to dive into certain aspects.
For sure.
Brad and I, when we first started working together, it was on this history of recorded music where Quincy Jones was the producer, Phil Ramone was the host. So we would go to old studios and record all these artists there. So I remember the first time going into, and I'm drawing a blank on, one of the biggest studios in New York where we filmed with Paul Simon. And it was this massive studio. It's like where Jimi Hendrix.
Could be Hit Factory. Could be Electric Lady. Right. It could be
Electric Lady.
That's where Hendrix recorded some of his.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. So I'm standing there, and you're looking at the wall of gold records and everything.
Right.
You being a musician and then going in there, like, what was that like, even as an intern?
I couldn't believe. I was in awe. And especially a lot of in the studio. And I forgive me for forgetting the name. But. They had all the gold records from Blue Oyster Cult, and they sold quite a lot of records. Might not be a household name, but there were a lot of bands like that in the 70s and 80s. It's these huge followings, and and you're like, well, this is where it happened. Like, this is where they were here for overnight sessions. For some reason, everyone recorded at night. I don't know why. It was a night thing. Yeah, I remember they were saying, like, yeah, show up around 4 and, we'll get going around 7. I'm like, okay. And then, before you know it's 6 a.m. But that was, and there were a lot of these studios, and I think about it now, I'm not as in touch with it, but I'm like, is that all gone? Is it all sort of kind of remote? And is it all, it's all MIDI was a word we used for, back then, which is now, I guess, sampling and anything that's kind of created, digitally. And I wonder, did music kind of take a hit for not being, for all of them being all in the same room and having to be there? A lot of times a lot of the players would play individually. They wouldn't all be in the same room at the same time because of certain, just there was a lot of overdubbing and playing tracks over and over again in different keys. But now it's like, where is that? And the new, as music, suffered. And it's funny because I see a lot of young people sort of kind of gravitating to these songs and artists from my era. And I'm like, wow, we did not do that. We were not looking at the 40s and 50s and Glenn Miller. Like, we want no part of that, right? but yet there must be something about that era of music where it's so authentic that it still kind of rings through to people, right?
I think there's a loss and there's a gain. I think what you're going back to when you're talking about working on the 2-inch tape and all of the.
But by the way, sorry to interrupt, Eric. So Eric went to audio engineering school.
Oh, you did? Okay, great.
Before,
well, I did program
so
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt, Eric. I just wanted to get
no, it's all good. Yeah, I have some experience with that. I think
he's actually in a recording studio right now.
No, I noticed.
I think there's a lost art to what you originally referenced of when you have to work in analog. I think it is way more precious. I think you're taking more care. I think you're using gear and you're being very intentional with that gear. It's not so simple as just to undo. And when that happens, I think that you're putting more care and love into that. So I do think there's a lost art in that regard. However, the flip of that is with going digital and the fact that everybody can have a box at their own computer at home is You're now also gaining exposure to artists that would never normally see the light of day. So there are some phenomenal, amazing artists out there that are able to just get stuff out there and not have to have a label behind them or whatever. So it's this weird juxtaposition, of two things that are both sad and a good thing.
And I talked I talked with Phil Ramone about this, is when they were cutting tapes, they couldn't get the beats exactly perfect on time. And there's something to that. And he's like, that's where the magic was. But my real question, Tony, is, was there any part of you going into that internship being like, they're going to see me play guitar, or I'm going to be able to show what I can do and maybe use recording time at night or something like that?
No, at that point I was sort of committed to, no, I want to learn this. I want to learn the trade. I want to be the person in front of the board, or the assistant. There was always another person who was sort of kind of sitting next to this big 2-inch machine, making sure it was working properly. So no, at that point, I was at peace with it. Like, I realized that, like, hey, listen, like, I'm not going to go there and shred, which that's the new term for like just kind of playing and riffing. And that was a good thing. I think I was sort of kind of maturing and being like, okay, listen, this is not what I do, but this would be great. Like, it's just to kind of, work with, experimenting on sounds. And Eric, you brought up a good point about how, like, and then Rick, about how, like, the whole process of it. And then there's more access now because everyone could go there and do it. Where back then it was very exclusive. Like, you had to get a label. It was really expensive too. Like, to fire up a studio like that, the gear was really expensive. These boards were hundreds of thousands of dollars, and back then a ton of money. The 2-inch machine itself was just, I remember, hearing the prices on that, and the maintenance on it was every day.
I was just gonna say, it's insanely difficult to maintain.
Every day you had to go recalibrate this machine. Like,
yes.
I can't think of anything like that today, right? And that was sort
pull
of
out the old tone tapes.
Studio.
Let's.
Tony, did you see the Beatles documentary? Or it's not even a documentary. It's a thing that Peter Jackson did.
The Peter
for
Jackson
Disney.
one, yes, I did.
That is amazing. If you just want to watch, like, just film being rolled and rolled and rolled, it's crazy. Tony, were you gigging and did you have a band?
Yeah, we had a cover band. We never really got into, like, producing anything original. But yeah, we used to do, like, Pink Floyd covers and Rush covers, and
that's awesome.
The songs that we could pull off. Some tracks are like, no, I can't do that. But it was just fun. I mean, we somehow got paying gigs. People came to see us, out in, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and we would have to go out to Staten Island to these clubs that were, they had all these rock cover bands, and there would, like, be, 3 or 4 of us on a night, and we all go up there and do our thing. And it was mostly family and friends, but it was a lot of fun. And then, I still have I still have a friend of mine back in Brooklyn who kept with it, and he's done. He's been a session player. He's had a good career. He's taught. I mean, you can make a living out of it. Back then we were like, well, either you make it or you don't make it. Like, it's like, either you get into that band, that super group, or you don't. And it's funny, like, going back and reading about, like, like Rush. I was reading about them coming back this year, and I remember being so in awe of them, like, wait, there's just 3 people? Like, a band is usually 4 or 5, and then 2 guitarists and, like, and then just there was one of the bands that was just like, wow, like that's a lot, and they were really great at their at bass guitar and drums, and Neil Peart, who we all just lost a little bit ago. So progressive rock was really interesting to me because it had this. I just thought they were all great musicians, and then
Yep.
and then they're just pushing it to a level that, especially in the studio and experimenting with sounds and the term they used to call overdubbing. The one person that sticks out was and a lot's been written about it. Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin was very, very curious about this, probably early on, and where they would place the amplifiers which was basically the speaker, the output of guitar, and then put the microphone down a long hallway, and
Right.
just to capture this. Like back then, that's how you got that sound. Where now there are all these filters that are built into these
100%.
software, right? But
Yeah.
Did you
very
see
physical.
it might get loud in here?
No, I did not see that, but I've heard. Yeah, no, I
It's
must check it out. Yeah,
yeah, you should check it out, especially because it's three amazing guitarists talking about the process, and
Right.
none of those people do it how they.
Yeah,
like,
very different. It's
very different,
pedigree
right.
of
Yeah.
guitar player. So
Oh,
pure
right.
analog to very effects heavy.
The music industry and film and television, though it's all entertainment, and like if you talk to my mom, she thinks it's all the same thing. But they're two different worlds. Like they are, you don't have connections. If you have connections to one, you don't have connections to the other. So how do you make that leap into TV?
I was lucky enough that I had a sister who was a business major, and she just happened to get a job as an accounting clerk for a company called Capital Cities, and they were a media company at the time. They owned ABC Network, and she had heard that I was also a sports fan. I was also an NFL fan, a baseball fan, a big Nuts fan, big Jets fan, and so I knew a little bit about sports. And she knew.
So if you're in Brooklyn, you're a Giants fan.
Yeah, there were little Giants. We were like in one of those neighborhoods where it was split. So there were Mets and Yankees fans,
really?
there were Giants and Jets fans. But Giants were right. That was like sort of it was one of those neighborhoods where there were both. And I, New York Rangers, though I wasn't
Right.
as big into hockey back then. And they, she knew like I kind of wanted to get working gigs, and I could only internship for so little money for so long, and was having trouble kind of getting a break into like a studio in Manhattan. And she's like, she had heard from someone that, they're looking for young kids who could come in on a Saturday afternoon and sort of support this college football halftime show they do, and they need kids to come in and kind of log games, like basically like. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, just like give us a play by just like just write down what time of day is on that clock and what the play was, and just don't miss a play, just every single play. I'm like, we called them, they called us loggers, and that's how you started in sports TV. And then I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. The energy of it, there were certain similarities because you walk into like, just a large recording studio, because it was you work in and there's all this gear everywhere, and there's all these rooms where people are editing, and then the dimming lights. So there was like aesthetically they were very similar. And then over time, there were a lot of things that you had to be creative and use your storytelling techniques, but also have to be creative how to use gear and how to work with other people and collaborate. And a lot of those, like when I mentioned earlier, a lot of those sort of kind of skill sets transferred over. And that's kind of how I got my start. And then back then there were like two roads in sports TV. You could go the live route and be one of those key production people in the truck or be on the crew, right? And it was a high pressure situation, live, right? It was easy to make mistakes. You had to be very, very focused. Or there was this other route where which was a big deal, what we call features, which was kind of a odd name, because when you say features, people think of feature film, but what they were just these 2 to 3 minute video packages on an athlete, on a game. We got and a lot of how TV and non-scripted gets produced today. You go out and you get your interviews, and then you maybe you shoot some of your own B-roll or content, or you then license the game clips as well, and you put together a story in 2 or 3 minutes. And back then we could use popular music to kind of score it, and you give it like these stories about like a shortstop for the Red Sox, but it had this like thematic, like Rudy, like effect to it, like, and and it was called we would call feature producers. And when I got to that role, I realized like, oh, this is a lot like, like a lot of the skill sets, putting together sort of kind of giving it a sound, a look, a feel. What music track are you going to use? How are you going to edit the track? How are you going to, sort of kind of pace the interview through your 2.5, 3 minutes? And then, long story short, end around, I end up coming back into the live space as well. But a lot of the people that I worked with, that came up with, who did features, are now working on, it became sort of a genre in sports. They work on sports documentaries. They've worked on, a lot of colleagues of mine I came up with would work on, Hard Knocks, which is the HBO special, where they're doing short turnaround, like documentary style, like, yeah. So that all, like, back then it started with this, the 2-3 minute piece that they would incorporate into the live show or the pregame show. Now they've become genres of their own, because they realize how impactful these were. And it kind of started late 90s when there were a lot of celebrations of the 20th century, these 20th century awards. And then ESPN had this series called Sports Century, where they basically did, 1 hour specials, and dozens of them on all the significant, sports icons of the century and their impact, and they were highly produced. And back then that was so hard to do. It was just almost like the way they used to, record music. There weren't digital cameras. Video cameras were really crude. The lenses weren't great. They had to do a lot of tricks on making these interviews look filmic. Some of them would even, like, given the budget, would shoot some of it on 16 millimeter and then transfer it to video, because at the end of the day it was still broadcast, right? So there was a lot of that going on. So when I saw, and I was involved a little bit with that in the late 90s, and I'm like, oh, this is a lot like, people being creative about how to record the guitar track. It's like,
absolutely. Right. You keep talking about that skill set that carries over, even at the highest level, that understanding of how to capture something, figure out, use creativity to produce something that's going to be presented to someone else at the highest level. It's a direct carryover, right? And all the rest of the pieces and parts, that go along with it, or how you execute that makes complete sense to me. So when you said it initially and you were like, carried over, but you kind of put it on a, like, I didn't really know how, but it made complete sense to me, right off the bat.
Where I get fascinated are the small steps. So you're logging, which I'm sure you worked with so many people that were loggers that aren't even part of the business anymore. When you sat there and you were logging, did you see a career path for you, or was it kind of like, I'll do whatever kind of happens?
At first, I was just like, I was so focused on, like, not messing it up, because that was the other thing too. There was a lot of, like, there was a lot of this inherent pressure, and good pressure. I heard this term a few years ago. I'm like, I wish I had known that term back when I was coming up in business. Pressure is a privilege, right? So, like, the reason why there's pressure is because it's like you're doing something that's like a big deal and it's significant and something you really want to do, and if there's pressure applied to it, means it just verifies that this is something that's worth digging into. And so really focusing on that. But no, I had no idea. Really didn't know what the opportunities were. Slowly started to discover the other aspects of what was going on the floor. I would give this log to a producer who then would sit with an editor, and they would somehow try to tell the story of the game based on all of the, the checkmarked plays that I'd given them, what the highlight was. And they were given maybe 40 seconds or 35 seconds. And then, but it was just not just taking the clips and putting them over, setting it up, like starting the video package, or maybe a split screen of the two coaches, or whatever the story was going in, or the two running backs, or and then figuring out what the cutaway was. And so there was a lot of purpose to telling this story. And I'm like, wow, just out of a sports highlight, they're really kind of digging into this. Like, it's not just grabbing, just grabbing this little extra clip from the game. It's like, how do you sort of kind of take all these clips, put it into a 40-second, it's as simple as a sports highlight sounds. They were almost creating a little movie in 40 seconds, and there were all these games, and then down in the, floor down, and it was funny. They used the same facilities that ABC News used, and I guess Saturday was a slow news day, and there were just not as many news people there, so we used their facility, and it was all in on uptown in Manhattan, and adjacent to Lincoln Square, where ABC had these huge buildings, but they just moved out of recently. But no, I had no idea. I had no idea where that was going to lead to. Really, just was kind of taking it all in, and then before you know it, they asked me to come back the next week, and then when college football season was over, hey, can you work on? Can you just be a runner for ABC? For the ABC Wide World of Sports show? And then it was funny back then. There were a lot of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or sometimes 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. Like, oh, I was logging, and now like I'm just getting coffee, and you had to be patient. Like everyone was like, listen, that's kind of how it goes. It's never a straight line.
Do you have advice that you tell people who are just starting out in this business now?
I try to be very, when I give advice, it's hard because the business is so different, right? And the paths are different. I try to kind of give them a little more of the life advice, or just more of the, how to kind of deal with pressure situations, how to, not necessarily like, oh, you should start here and then maybe this will lead to that. Because I don't really know. I didn't know what it would be for me. And then now it's just, I have a good idea of like, oh, yeah, if you want to be a director, you should probably do this. If you want to be a producer or writer, you should maybe like lean into this. But right now, it's just, there's a lot of ways you could go. You could definitely, you could zigzag, quickly. Where back then you kind of had to pick a path, because you're going to put a lot of time into, one skill set. So I try to be a little bit more like, be patient. The story I just gave you about how, 2 steps forward, sometimes 1 step back, sometimes 3 steps back. That's what I tell a lot of people. Like, hey, listen, don't get discouraged. There's always, and I give them examples of what happened to me. It's okay to take the lesser gig just to, keep working. Because you want to always bring money in, but 2, also just to keep your mind moving and don't feel like you're taking a step back and people are going to look at you like, because like, oh wait, no, I thought why are you taking that gig? You're really a producer. Now you're taking a gig as an associate, but that's okay. Don't like turn that down. That might open it up another door, or there might be another skill set that you get from that experience. It'll make you the better producer you ultimately want to be. And that's kind of what I tell people.
That's great.
You get into producing. Let's kind of jump a little bit ahead, because now you're the head honcho on these sets and stuff like that. What was that path like? And then can you give us some of the kind of high pressure situations you've been in?
Yeah, no, for sure. Back then, live sports TV was a high pressure, thing. It was like I said, the equipment was very crude. The technology was crude. There were just you had to be on top of things because there was a high failure rate with a lot of this technology, and it all came down on you. Like, well, the machine didn't queue up, and like, but no, you need to learn how to make sure the machine doesn't do that. And and just slowly got into it. Like there were certain tiers you would come in as a the entry point for the entry level in the production truck was the graphics coordinator, the person that sat with an engineer type that ran this graphics generator and made sure that all the info, all the content, all the facts or the stats of the lower third graphic were correct and then were sold to the director at the right time. So you would the engineer would be the graphics operator would be calling it up, but you'd be the one telling the director, the graphic is good, or you say font is good, or whatever it is. And that was pressure because you were like making sure that you were saying it at the right time. You were chirping in at the right time, because at the same time in the front of the truck, there's a lot of talking between the director and the producer and the AD about where to go, where they're going. They're speaking in the ear of the talent, leading them to what's coming next. Is it a replay that's coming? Is it a graphic that's coming? So all of a sudden you're, even though you're just the junior person, you're in the conversation. You're part of like driving the ship. And it was daunting. It was a little intimidating because you make sure you had to come in and say the right thing at the right time. And then over time, through, you work your way up, you try to then become the associate director, and then sit behind the director, and then keep the director honest on, what cameras are coming in, what feeds are coming in, talking to the people back at the station, when to roll the commercials, which was very nerve-wracking, and making sure that got in, because that all, the money had to, that paid the bill. So and then you're not really sure when you're going to go to commercial, but you have to get them all in before you sign off for the broadcast. And so that pressure's still there too. But slowly just kind of, working my way up into all of these positions in what we call the truck, which is another whole phenomenon. Basically, it's people like, what's the truck? What are you talking about? It's like, basically, it's a studio. It's a studio on wheels, and they're still out there.
It's a mobile studio. Yeah, like
it's a mobile
everyone's
studio.
seen it when you see like NBA games, they'll go into.
They're all parked.
Studios
There's like these white elephants that are parked outside by the
Yep.
by the loading dock. That's another thing too. Like, we always make fun of, like, because they would always put these trucks near like the dumpster. And I'm like,
right.
They're like, all of these guys are like, big legends in the business are walking out, and they're like, walking by the dumpster to get to the truck. It wasn't very,
That's hilarious.
when we walk in, it was just beautiful,
glamorous.
like, wow, like they fit all this into a truck, and they expand, and they're very, and they're still a thing, and they're, it's funny about that now, like, because of the technology, a lot of this could be done remotely. And then during the pandemic, it really came out where we could not be together, and a lot of this technology that existed quickly became, products that now might be a more sensible option for certain productions, where you could do everything remotely, and everyone could kind of get on a piece of software, set up a few monitors at their home, with good connectivity, and all do the roles they would have done as if they were all sitting in a truck. But still, they're still there, because the big shows, they still need that. They also need that sort of that chemistry of, between the director and the producer and the TD, right, all sitting together in the front bench. And there's a certain energy there that makes it, a lot of shorthand. A lot of it is just, tapping someone on their shoulder, that you can't do remotely. So I don't think trucks are going away.
No,
and a lot of those trucks as well, they're the ones that are state of the art. They're the ones that have the best equipment, the best gear, because
the live
venues,
feed.
Yeah, the live feed. These venues don't keep all of their gear up, and constantly, whatever. So you have the event there, but you need the ability to get it out and to produce it properly.
Yeah, it's funny you say it. I was how you guys are from Michigan. I'll never forget when I was at USA Network back then, and they're actually back to becoming more sports network, but they had a lot of sports programming back in the '90s, and there was talk about, like, why doesn't just the arenas or the stadiums just build their own, productions, control rooms, and then we could just go there and have to roll a truck. And one of the arenas was, and I don't know if it's still there, the Palace in Auburn Hills.
Yeah,
right?
It's gone now.
Yeah, it's gone.
It's gone. Okay,
it's
so
gone.
I remember we used to do fights there, right? There was a show on USA Network called Tuesday Night Fights, and every Tuesday night fight, they have 2 hours of live boxing, like on USA Network. This was a thing.
Yeah.
And it was a great show, because we were like, we would always go to the hometown of the fighter, and I remember, like, being in that place, like, I'm like, this is pretty good. Like, everything's like, you don't have to, like, worry about, like, the truck getting there, and, like, everything working that's another thing too. Like, every time you fired up the truck, you're like hope everything still works.
I'm sorry, I just to comment on that. I remember when Palace, when the Palace was built, right, and they moved out of playing out of the Silverdome, and it was a state of the art facility. It was a brand new facility, and there was some of the stuff that went in there. The problem is people never want to continue to invest to continue to upgrade, that stuff, that gear.
Yeah, now it's just software updates. Then back then it was like, you had to buy a whole new piece of hardware.
For sure.
The thing that irritated me about the Palace, this is a side tangent, is I don't know if you know this, Tony. They opened it up for the public to name that place, and so someone called it the Palace of Auburn Hills, and this person won. I don't know if it was a male or female. In my head, it was a female who did this, but they gave them free tickets for life to any event there, and then they tear it down. If I'm that person, I have this iconic the Palace of Auburn Hills. Like when you look at the Malice of the Palace,
I was
the
just gonna
Indiana.
say that. That's the first thing that pops into your head when you hear the Palace.
And she named that, like, or he or she named that, and now doesn't get to go to anything. That's just bullshit,
that's
Tony.
wrong. Absolutely, it should be the new home where the Pistons are today, right?
Yeah, it should be carry on for life.
By the way, it might be. We don't know what happened with that. Maybe when they took it down, they gave
the person down. I didn't know that was and they got tickets for life for everything. Wow, anything that came through that place. Yeah, I remember, and that was it was interesting back then. That was not to get off topic, but that was that the exodus of the arenas from the downtowns to the suburbs, and then now it's back the other way, right?
That's correct.
So,
yep, and of course corrected.
Which is good. Yeah.
Well, and all the stadiums now, you talk about the technology stuff, but it's literally just plugging into a box that they put outside now, right? Where before, like setting up was setting up back then, and now it's just kind of like you hook up to what they already have.
Yeah, so they're all cabled, and they based on the sport, they've done these fiber drops and runs to. It's all embedded in the infrastructure of the building when they build them. But back then, there was so much cable, and the cables that would attach to the cameras were really thick. They were almost like 4 inches thick, and they used to call them home runs, meaning like we have to basically. Like run this cable, the equivalent of what a home run ball would be, that was what the term was. And
they would direct connection.
And at the end of the night, pull their cable, and then next day, or the next week, Fox would be there to do the game and lay their cable down, and then pull it back.
That was always the worst, is pulling it back. Laying it was always fun because you're at the start, but pulling it back is like the day's over.
And they call what they call strike, and they didn't really need everyone. And then I would listen to the crew kind of negotiate. Hey, can you do strike for me tonight? Because I got to get out of here. I'm like, I'll do it for you next week. Because it was like another 3 hours, and then some guys are like, yeah, like this is 3 hours of OT. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Did being a sports fan, were you kind of in awe of all the places you got to go and stadiums and sports stars?
Oh, for sure. But eventually, yes. But it was hard to be a fan after that. But of a certain team or your teams, And then one example was, like in my early 40s, I got this opportunity to work on the New York Mets broadcast, regional broadcast out of New York. They had just created their own broadcast network. It was a startup, and they were going to produce their own games. And I got to be part of that team. It was, I'm like, I can't be a fan anymore. I have to just kind of be focused on what the job is. And, but for sure, but over time you're like, I got to be professional about it. Cause I remember, my director saying, no rooting in the truck, like no rooting in the truck. So, but for sure, and that's the great part of what what I've done. I got to see not just all of these great, cities and sports venues, and also the towns where we were staying too. It wasn't just like the ballpark. It was like the neighborhood. Especially when we did. I mentioned that Tuesday Night Fights show. We would go to the hometowns of the fighters, and some of them were like, they weren't all at the Palace. They would be at these smaller arenas in their small towns. So I got to see small town America, which was quite an education, back in the 90s, and seeing how everyone else lives their lives and all the different, lifestyles there are throughout America. And then ultimately, when I came to work for IMG in the 90s, we were doing a lot of, sort of like specialty made for television events, and got to do some international travel. One of the shows was the World's Strongest Man, which we still do to this day. Yeah. And back then, we had a partnership with the BBC. And the BBC insisted that these locations be these, these exotic, locations, destinations that people wanted to go to. And so every year they would stage the World's Strongest Man in some place very cool. And the business model was that the tourist bureaus of these countries loved the idea of it, to showcase their country on the BBC, because it would broadcast between Christmas Day or Boxer Day and New Year's Day, and that's traditionally when UK families plan their holidays, and it worked. Like, so you'd be staged, the World's Strongest Man in the Bahamas, and the Bahamas are behind it because they know, oh wait, we'll get people from the UK then book their vacation for the Bahamas next year, and it worked. The metrics worked, and we've gotten away from that a little bit, but that's where we got to see the world. And we're live. We would the backdrops were whatever landmark they wanted us to sort of kind of focus on that day, on that episode, and that was a lot like making an album or a record. Like, what do you do? Like, you show up and you're like, how do you shoot this? Cover this crazy strongman event that we're doing, but at the same time show off the beautiful like venue that we're at. That was quite an interesting program to put together. Though there wasn't live, and we would have a little more time. There was, it had its unique sort of challenges, and we got to see the world doing it, which is awesome.
That's amazing. Let's go back to the truck for a second. You were talking about the graphics coordinator moving up, to assistant director, and then moving up. Did you find, as stressed as you were as a logger, the next step is even more stressful, then more stressful, absolutely. And then more stressful, and then the kind of talk about that aspect of it, but also in terms of like, did you ever, because I do this all the time, where I'm like, if I go and direct something now, I'm like, I just want a PA. I don't want any responsibilities. I just want to be low man on the totem pole. Like, did you have that going in there?
Oh,
Did
yeah.
it ever
there were so many
like
days
that?
where I would look at the PA like, I wish I was just doing what you were doing today.
Right? And that kid's probably stressed out.
Yes. And like just one of those days where like, oh my God, like this is so much pressure. But then when you get off the air and you're like, all right, like good. And then it took a while for us to be like, there was always that that pit in your stomach, even when I got into, I was the graphics coordinator, but then there was also another sort of entry level, being position was being sort of the person who would sit back in the playback area where all the replays were happening, and then where all of the video package were being played out of. So they call it tape, the tape room. So I ended up coming more gravitating towards the tape room, and doing a lot more work there, and then coming up in that role as the tape AD, and because of my experience of doing those features and knowing how videotape worked and being familiar with all the tape formats, there were so many different formats of tapes. It was ridiculous. At one point, they were all different sizes, and it was just like it was like the land of misfit toys, And we had these big like steamer trunks where we transport all these tapes to the next venue, because you never know what archive you needed or clip from the game the week before. Yeah, there was a lot of that before it got all digitized. And yeah, but no, for sure. And I always felt like that, even to this day. Like when you're hearing the AD counting down, when we're going live, and there's always that countdown from 10, like it's a freaking like we're going to launch a rocket or something. Yeah. It's like, it's still nerve-wracking, but then once you get in, you're like, all right, like, it's still, you never know. I always say, like, sometimes it's like driving like 18-wheeler down an icy road. You're like, you just don't know where it's going to go. Especially now when we do like the New York City Marathon, a lot of sports where there aren't like these natural timeouts on the field where you could go to break, where it's like end of an inning, timeout of football and basketball. Let's go to commercial. Where an event like the New York City Marathon, you they're not going to stop running, so you have to go at certain times, knowing, okay, this is a good time, because you don't want to be missing. When they come back when they get to the bridge, it's a big moment. Like, got to be back from commercial before then, but all this other business you have to get in, and so there's still a lot of that, which is I find it to be like one of the more challenging shows I've ever worked on, which is a lot of fun, and it's but at the same time, there's a lot on the line. You got to roll those commercials. You got to get the business in. You got to pay the bills, and then you still have this like as if I was like a 22-year-old doing graphics. That same like feeling, like okay, like it doesn't go away.
I want to get into the New York Marathon in 1 second. Just one question I want to ask is, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but is there a time you messed up and it like still weighs on you?
Oh my God. Oh yeah. I'll never forget the time when I tried back, I was trying to do anything that came up. It was a gig economy back then, before there was a gig economy. And I remember once a friend of mine said, oh, they're looking for like people to run camera at the CNN studio in New York. I'm like, okay, I could do that. And then they auditioned me, and they're like, oh, he's pretty good. I never thought of myself a cameraman, but it was just like just making sure that it was framed right. Like they had certain frames, and I remember we were doing a show. It was early morning, and I um, I always got the stage right, camera screen left thing, kind of like
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Always like
To this
so.
day, I still screw that up.
And there was this they had these over the shoulder boxes, like they had these like there was always, I don't know if you looked at like old news clips from the 80s and
Oh
90s
yeah.
where like the camera would pan left and then a little box would come up with a topic, a graphic, like uh, like factory worker strike, whatever it was. So, and you have to like do that on the fly. You're like, all right, frame left, we're going to put the box in. And of course, I went the other way, and the box went over the anchor's head.
Oh, was the director yelling at you?
Oh, it was just like, yeah, it was bad. But then, and then for the years, I'm like, oh God, my career's over. But, but it was, but it's learning, you know what? It all, like, at the end of the day, as painful as it was a good thing that it happened. Because then you're like, okay,
Yeah.
the worst has
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
You know what? And it wasn't bad. No one died. And,
That's
yeah,
I tell
there's a
myself
lot
that way
like
too
that, for
often.
sure. Oh yeah, there's always stuff like that. Even like after we get off the air, anytime, like, I should have never cue. I had a bad cue on that, or I should have given our talent a little more direction on that. They were a little bit like, not really more sure where we're going there. And I little nuanced things that you catch, but of course you're gonna kind of, I don't want to say beat yourself up about it, but like I wish I could have, done a little better there. Which is good. I mean, that's a good thing if you're still doing that. Like,
Yeah.
you're
Means
still
you
doing
care.
that after a few decades. I think that's healthy, right?
Yep. So, talk to me about the New York City Marathon. So, how long does it take to start producing it, and then walk us through the day of? Because to me, this is the problem. Like because I always think of my mom. I always try to explain things to her because she's not part of the industry. She doesn't know what it takes to go into it. She doesn't know how to make something look seamless. If you had an unlimited budget, this seems like it would be the easiest thing in the world to shoot. Put a camera everywhere and cut to it when someone's there. But that's not the case, right? So kind of walk through the producing of it
Sure.
and the directing of it.
Yeah, I mean, we're in planning for months. It's an interesting sport because they're moving over. Instead of a 100-yard football field or an arena or an ice rink, you're 26.2 miles. So all the cameras have to be wireless, obviously. Well, a good portion of them. The only time we really have hard cameras is at the start and the finish, and there were a few hard cameras along the way, but only getting shots for a few seconds. So you're really
And
traveling.
how many cameras are there?
So we're close to like 40 now. We're close to 40.
40. That sounds like a lot, but for 26 miles.
For 26 miles. So we have maybe like 10 cameras at the start, and then once the start is done, they're clear. And then we have about maybe 7 or 8 cameras that roam the 26.2 miles with the maybe about 10 with choppers and now we have drones helping. So and there's also not just one race. There's 4 races. There's a professional men and professional women. And we also cover the wheelchair races as well. So you have about 2 cameras on each of those races. And there's a lot of tech that goes into making sure you have a continuous signal of those cameras, coming through without any breakup. There's a lot of challenges, especially in a place like New York City, where a lot of this wireless technology takes up some frequency and bandwidth in the airways, and you've got Homeland Security, or they're jamming things because of national security, and so there's always that. They're always trying to find new ways to kind of transmit that signal up to the cloud and then back into the production truck that's sitting at the finish line in Central Park. So, we have a lot of vendors that know how to do this well. But every year it's almost like we're like starting again because something's changed. Like, oh, we can't do that, and we can't use that we can't use that cellular network anymore. We can't. There's a dead spot at mile 6 that we just can't figure out. And you have to be like, all right, we're going to have no coverage. So we got to go somewhere else. It's coming. And then like, hey guys, this is where we have that dead spot. Like we got to get out. Like you're not going to have anything for a little bit. And it's just, you would think in this day and age you get the seamless, like, but it's not true. It's still not there. Like, it's funny how, almost in a way we were actually, the signal was more stable back in the day, and there was less cameras. We had one of those moto cameras. Basically, it's what I mean by moto cameras. It used to be a camera person on a motorcycle, basically riding side saddle and just, for 26.2 miles and, strapped in. Now we've kind of, upgraded to like the old, we invested in these smart cars and then hollowed them out. And then, and then sort of kind of fitted it for a camera person to sit, the camera to kind of sit on a stand, a driver. So, we have, all of that, that's working fine. But when it comes up to getting that signal up from the moto, the moto camera back to us in real time with proper audio, with good, unabated sort of kind of video strength, it's just it's not always easy. They used to use microwaves back, and it was actually a lot harder back then, where they would just basically kind of ping pong the signal from rooftop microwaves all the way back to us in the truck. And now we use these cellular networks called bonded cellular that are sort of kind of grade above the consumer bandwidth that people are using. But the consumer bandwidth can affect, if there are like 2 million people at the finish line, they're all on their cell phones. Yeah. We start, like, it starts creeping into us. So in a way, it's like, we don't have to, now we're going to be okay. It's a lot cheaper, and it's all more, it's easier to set up. We don't have to go on rooftops, but at the same time, there's this one thing where, like, if there's a lot of people on their phones, like, and it's funny, like, you have these other new challenges, like technology goes so far. Again, one step, 2 steps forward, 1 step back sometimes there too.
Do you guys have to stay till the last person crosses?
No, we don't. We don't, but they do. So it's interesting. Like the day is long. There's a lot of there are some folks that just basically Staten Island is where the race starts, which is on the side of New York Bay, and there's a group there that just kind of they just stay there all week, and they do their thing there, and then once this race starts, they're clear. We stay on for quite a bit. We're on for like 7 hours. And then the New York Roadrunners is the great organization that puts this race on. They're doing almost like another 10 of our productions on the course. The people that close the course, the people that sort of kind of dress up the finish line and dress up the start line with branding and making everything look great, and then also just the maze of the course going through. It's not just like a few boulevards and a left and a right. I mean, it's going through some zigzagging through some old neighborhoods in Brooklyn and Queens, and just amazing what they do on their level. And they do stay for the last person. They do this really cool thing where eventually the city's like, you got to shut the thing down. So in a lot of marathons, what they'll send this bus over, they'll send this bus up the course. And if you're still out there, they're like, hey, got to get in the bus, we're opening the roads up. But what they do, they kind of do it in a way where they sort of kind of set this thing up called final finisher. So they kind of slowly, have these buses kind of go through the course, and they have this group of people that are going to be the last people to finish the marathon. They do this every year, and then around 8:00 at night, a whole new crowd shows up at the finish line. The New York Roadrunners stages this thing like a festival with lights and the DJ and music, and then like hundreds of people come out. Like, it's a lot, and they cheer on the final finishers, like the last people to finish the marathon, and all these great human interest stories that are tied behind these stories and the stories of the people that are running it. They just did a documentary film about it, which is really impactful. So yes, they do. They cool. Stay there and they live stream that thing, and it's beautiful.
Okay, I have a theory. Detroit Lions did not make the playoffs this year. I have a tradition every year of watching Super Bowl's greatest commercials. Last year, who hosted it?
Last year we had Nate Burleson and Danny Roy. We had new hosts.
Yep.
And Kevin Frazier.
And what team did Nate play for?
He played for the Vikings. And did he come to the Dolphins? Was it a Lion as well? Yes.
He was a Lion.
Yes. That's right. That's right. I forgot his Lion.
he's got a quote that's now famous amongst conspiracy theorists like myself that say the NFL doesn't want the Lions to win. Like that it's really hard for them to win. So my theory is you, sir, made it so the Lions did not make the playoffs, and if we'll just put your email up here for all our Detroit fans.
It's the first time Nate hosted the show too. Yeah,
oh, I know, and we were supposed to win the Super Bowl this year.
I know.
You're
right.
This is a rare option where I'm actually wearing Lions gear today, which is a rare opportunity
the Hawaii blue. They call it the Hawaiian blue, right?
Yep.
This is actually this is
that's
it's
Aiden Hutchinson's. Yeah, it's his. Those are expensive, by the way.
It's his brand. I'm
really
not buying
expensive.
lots of it, just to be clear.
So we were broken this year, and
I'm a big NFL fan. I know, and I think the whole country was rooting for the Lions and the Bills. To be that Super Bowl for the last 3 years. I think the country won that Super Bowl 3 years ago. And it's still those two teams still, and those are teams people don't really hate. Like there's a lot of very strong opinions about a lot of teams, like Cowboys, Patriots.
But
when you Lions and Bills, you listen, how can you no one's hating on them. Their fans shit. I could be one of them. I could be that fan.
Because we've never won anything in football, so it's one of those things where it's hard. It's like the Cleveland Browns. It's hard to hate the Cleveland Browns. I do, but it's hard to hate them. It's you have no shot.
I was everyone was very surprised with the performance of the Lions this year for sure, and. But I do remember one of for the Super Bowl's greatest commercials. It's kind of an interesting program because we kind of want to celebrate the commercials from the game, and there's obviously a big correlation to the game itself, but it's almost like the halftime show in a way where it's become this sort of almost genre of of content where these little movies that are so much on the line. It's like the big night for the big brands to kind of get that captive audience. And now over years, it's even more significant because it's one of the few events that people are going to have to sit through the commercials for, and they're all together and watching.
And the thing is it's so nostalgic to watch that. Even you, did you do last year was the funniest commercials?
Yeah, we did the funniest. Yeah, funniest.
Yeah, so it's really nostalgic to go back and watch those, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. Obviously, you remember the what's up,
what's up,
what's up, you remember all that stuff. But then but you guys have so many in there that you're like, oh my god, I totally forgot about that. And it's kind of like it's almost as if you get played a tape from the 80s and you're like, oh my god, I forgot about that song. I need to put that on my list. I would go back and rewatch some of these commercials after you guys aired them. I was like, oh man, I forgot about that.
They're timeless. We were timeless. Yeah.
Timeless is a great way of saying it. So producing that, is that a little less stressful?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of variables there. We try to tape the show pretty close to the game. Because we kind of want to be relevant. We want to kind of make references to who's in the game. Also, a lot of these, we do a whole segment on the commercials and teasing the new commercials that are going to be on the game the following week. We usually air on a Monday or Tuesday night, and the game's on the following Sunday. So there's a little bit of sometimes making sure that there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of clearance tiers, the music. All the actors we have to clear and get consent from. The brands have to be on board. Sometimes there's a spot that we've been using for years and the brand's like, you know what, we really don't want to use that anymore. We don't want to be nostalgic. Can you bring in a new spot? There's a whole new list of players and actors we have to clear, and so there's a lot of that there. There's a deadline, but the best part is then talking about getting to see all these venues, and then what I mentioned, World's Strongest Man, going to all these locations and shooting there. The great thing about this show, we shoot in the host venue of the game, and we do it right after the AFC Championship game. So we're there while the halftime show is getting ready, and all the activity that goes into these stadiums, full on 14 days out of the game. People have no idea what it takes to kind of put on this huge spectacle. You have to kind of drape the whole venue into Super Bowl. It can't look like you're playing at the
Right.
home of the 49ers like they are this year. I never forget when I was in, it was Super Bowl 40, and it was at, you guys will remember, it was at Ford Field, and
Yeah.
that place is beautiful. That was
Yeah.
and it was downtown,
Yeah.
and there wasn't a lot of like room off of the field. Like everything was really tight, and the sight lines were beautiful, and so that's another great thing about it. Like you just get to see all these new, and then a lot of times the new stadiums, because the NFL award the franchise just built a new stadium, so we get to see these new stadiums, and SoFi here in LA, which is beautiful, and
Unbelievable.
yeah, and then where the Vikings play, that was another beautiful, venue that you just don't see when you're watching the game. You have no idea like what these structures are like, and the amount of care and thought that goes into it, and just to make it a great fan experience too. Watching the game on TV is nothing like being there. So totally different experience.
Well, it was interesting because you guys film, like you said, where the Super Bowl is going to be, and this last Monday in our Monday morning meeting, you're like, I hope there's not any 49ers fans, but it was good for you that the 49ers lost.
Because the 49ers would have had hosted, there's a good chance they would be hosting the championship game, which is the day after we shoot, which would create a lot of chaos for us because we wouldn't be able to do a walkthrough. And they would still be tearing up the taking down whatever they had for championship game and getting the Super Bowl ready. And that happened one year here in LA when the Rams won a few years ago. It was not fun.
It's things you don't like. Normal people don't think about that. They're like, who cares? Like, you want this team to win or lose. And like, but when you said that in Monday, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. They're like, yeah, that's going to be a nightmare for you.
Oh, we were tracking that like week 15. We're like, like wait, like everyone's like worried about their team just making the playoffs. I'm like, oh yeah, how can the Niners not host the AFC Championship game?
Yeah.
Who needs to win this week?
So we've taken so much of your time, but we got to end with.
No, I appreciate this was great, guys. I hope I gave you some,
good
stuff that
Tony,
people
you're
will
amazing.
watch, and people coming into the business or any business that hopefully I could play it forward a little bit, and
No, for
just
sure,
share
you
some of
did.
my experience.
You're such a nice guy in that way too. So let's end with: do you have a defining moment? Something that you were kind of going down the path, and then.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously it seems like it could be the music thing, but that seems too obvious.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think one of the defining moments for me it got me more out and sort of kind of get back into kind of make that pivot back to the live aspect of the industry was when we were working on the Olympics in 1996, and we were actually. It was one of the first Olympics where they started realizing, like, hey, we could keep some people in New York. We have all these facilities here. There's the early days of fiber optics, and so the area that I was working in, our little unit, we're producing sort of the opening teases for all the shows for all the networks, and then the bumpers and the promos, and we were all in New York, and we had like this. I had like this 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. shift, and it was 12-hour shifts, and it was the morning of the bombing, and in Olympic Park in Atlanta, and we walk in, and it happened overnight, and news had taken over the whole operation because like this is a news event, and I'll never forget this gentleman named Jeff Zucker, who was the now is the big executive. He was the executive at CNN, and then he was a producer, one of their news producers. I think he was a Today Show producer and news producer. And then the way he just got into that chair and just took control of this event, and just in our control that was set up for us, and just knew like where everything was, and just started kind of quarterbacking, getting reporters on the scene, trying to figure out who to talk to, who the experts were, and I'm like, wow, like that's amazing. Like that to me, that kind of got me the bug to like. Yeah, not news, but like there's a little bit on that in sports, but just to see, just someone just kind of roll out of bed and just kind of, meet the moment of a big news story, and again, kind of form, and then help, with the benefit of just always thinking about like, what do people want to know? Like people watching, they just got up, they have no idea what's happening. How do we get them the story. And that was to me like, oh wow. And then I'm kind of like, yeah, maybe I should, that's just something I was really curious about. And then that's kind of how I kind of lean more into the live remote production is what the technical term is for it. Live remote production.
So what was like, walk us through that day. I mean, I totally forgot that 96, that was the Atlanta Olympics. What was that like from the sports side of things? Were you guys, do you think they were going to cancel the Olympics? Like,
we didn't know. We were, there was actually another event that happened right before the Olympics. It was interesting. Again, we were working, the news divisions of the, like I had mentioned earlier with ABC and then NBC, they had all the infrastructure. They were the ones who were on the air all day long. So when the Olympics came up, we kind of took over some of their operation at 30 Rock, their studios and all. And right before the games, there was a very tragic airline disaster with the TWA Flight 800, I believe. Yep. Literally, like right before, like it was literally like the Wednesday before opening ceremonies, and it was very weird. Sort of like, didn't people really know what happened to this plane? It just exploded midair, right at New York. Then they were talking about like, is this terrorism? Do we need to cancel the games? Because that was the early days of like that. That terrorism threat, like we were targets, this is a few years before 9/11. So that's when, that was another, like, and being in a news, again, news people running in like, hey guys, we need to, I know you're getting ready for the Olympics, but this is an important story. We're like, we get it. but it was one of those like, it was very sobering because you really like, it's different to kind of see it on TV, but then you're like sitting there and seeing the people that have to report it and have to kind of, and the stoicism and just like how they just are like, how do you like, tell the story of this horrible event, and you have to be really sober for it. And it was just really very impressed with the way, people in news, how they deal with events like that. But I remember very clearly.
Wow. Tony, you're amazing. Unbelievable. I'm so happy you agreed to do this. Can't thank you enough for it.
No, pleasure, guys. I really, I'll be rooting for your Lions next year for sure. I mean, there's always that year where like, what? There's always like that ascension to like a championship. Oh, there was that off year. Then they came back. That's what I'm thinking.
Rick's going to need a little time before he's going to admit he'll root for him again. He's
dead
he's
to
in
me.
That.
Yeah, no,
he's very emotional, so it'll take a little bit. He'll be back.
I have a box of tissue here, so if I start crying because I knew we were going to talk about him. Then they got a great nucleus, and I'm a really big fan of the coach. So
one quick note, Tony, just about something that you had talked about earlier that I really appreciated, and it's been a theme with various people that we've talked to, which was that willingness. You literally said kind of sort of that advice, but that willingness to be able to do a thing and do a job. And if you do that, if you see a thing and you're drawn to that for whatever the reason may be, right? But the willingness to do that and try and do a really good job at that particular thing is only going to open doors. It's only going to open, so what could seem like a step back in some fashion or whatnot, you never know what's on the other side of being successful at that thing or working on that thing. The relationships, the knowledge, the learning, the technology, all the pieces that could lead you down different paths. And it did direct in certain ways your level of comfortability or moving to different things, to be able to allow for success. So I find that Rick always dives into like the path, right? That people ended up, how did you get to where you were? And it's such that common thread that is so important for everybody, so I just wanted to comment on it.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I appreciated that you brought it up.
No, I appreciate you saying that, but yeah, no, it wasn't easy, and it's not easy. I'm not saying it'd be easy for anyone to do that. Sometimes it's hard to swallow, but you know what? It's all relative. That's another thing we used to say. Hey, it's all relative. It's all relative. Even though you're like the boom operator today, but you want to be the lead audio guy, that's okay because it's like they'll just make you a better, A1 when you get that chance, and you will. You just got to stick with it. Right. You got to grind it out, as they say in today's world. Grind it out.
For sure.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Way to bring it back to the Lions.
Yeah, bring back the Lions. They're grinding it out for sure.
He's coming
Fans are
back. He's
grinding
coming.
it out.
I can feel it.
Thank you, Tony.
Awesome. Thank you,
pleasure,
Tony.
guys. Thank you. You guys are wonderful. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Enjoy your wild card weekend.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.
All right, Tony. Now you know why I wore my black shirt. I looked exactly like him. No, I was when he came on. I was like, "Oh my god!" It looks like we were like coordinating.
You rarely wear a wait. You rarely wear a button-up collared
It's
shirt.
only for important interviews.
That's what it was, Tony. Congratulations.
Yeah,
You
go look at when I wore button-ups. You'll see them. It's the important ones. So people like Trevino and Tim Montana, fuck you.
Yeah, not so much. Not so much.
You don't get anything. T-shirt.
Hoodie if you're lucky.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you were about to comment on
No,
Tony.
he's such a good dude. Such a good dude. When we were going, he's easy. He plays along with everything. Like we were doing at the holiday party, so we had some other people, and it's just like, let's rapid fire, thumbs up, middle, thumbs down, films of this year, and we would just rapid fire.
Fun.
And everything he would say, he'd laugh and he'd be like, "Oh, that's a good movie." And he'd like put his thumb up. He's just fun to be around. It's one of those guys.
That's great. I love it. Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, I'm really glad he was willing to spend some time. I had no idea he was West Coast, LA. How was that not part of the conversation? Just started at 6:30 in the morning.
Well, that's why I wrote, because I didn't know if he was going to be in New York or LA.
Yeah, you put it out there. To be fair.
Yeah, I did. I was like, dude, if it's too early, just let us know. We can move it. But
yeah.
He's so accommodating. Like
That's fun.
Yeah, he's such a good dude.
Well, hopefully we'll thank you again, Tony. Hopefully he knocked it out, so now he's got his day ahead of him to get some stuff done. You know what's something that popped into my head? We were like in the middle of the interview, and I was like, I didn't ebb and flow it. I was like, we're so out of practice for doing interviews. I was like, I didn't ebb and flow it. And then I was like, well, I can't do it in the middle of the interview. So then I was like, oh, maybe we should do a pickup at the end.
We have to do a pickup.
And then we can throw it back in there.
We have to do a pickup. So you guys we've pulled the curtains back. And so now, Eric.
Here, ebb and flow. Here we go.
That's the first time in 2026. You still got it. Are we done?
Are we done?